Good afternoon, dear friends. We warmly welcome you from the Caribbean. We welcome you to all watching us from throughout the world. This last session of this 27th Annual International Symposium on Law and Religion, held on this occasion via Zoom virtually. The topic being religious freedom, rights and responsibilities. My name is Rafael Gutierrez. I'm Director for Communications for the Caribbean of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, one of the sponsors of this session for the Caribbean, together with the Brigham Young University of the United States and the Pontifical Catholic Church of the Dominican Republic. This event has been held for 27 years now, and for many years it was held in the Dominican Republic and the Caribbean with the attendance of 100 delegates from 50 countries throughout the world. And thanks to a partnership between the Brigham Young University and the National Pontifical Catholic University of the Dominican Republic, it started in 2017 with a regional symposium for the Caribbean. On this occasion, because of the pandemics, we are holding it virtually so that we can come together in such an important forum. There have been major discussions since Sunday when the symposium started, and we are finishing with this last session, the particular case of the Caribbean. This session is called Challenges and Opportunities for Religion in the Post-COVID Era, and it has the sponsorship of the Brigham Young University, the Pontifical Catholic University, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The context is very important, especially for us people from the Caribbean who have a strong faith and religious tradition. We can discuss here how COVID has affected activities carried out by these institutions. We have noticed difficulties that are clear to us and that will come in future. We've witnessed faith communities failing to meet because of the measures undertaken by the different governments. In some countries, there are prohibitions in terms of holding religious ceremonies or rites. Religious groups, for example, have been subject to increased pressure in terms of the humanitarian services they provide because of the pandemics, as well as an increased need for spiritual, emotional, and social aid by the different people who have been affected. Likewise, there are huge opportunities, the opportunity for communities to approach governments and work together for the sake of the community amidst this situation. Also, there's the opportunity to work with civil society, and it's outstanding how people have focused on faith and spirituality amidst the pandemics. Yet another opportunity is the possibility of working together with society. In introducing such an important session where we will talk about these and other topics, we will have with us Dr. Denise Posse de Lindbergh, who is Senior District Judge of the 3rd Judicial District Court of Utah in the United States and member of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies of the J. Reuben Clark University, reporting to Brigham Young University. I leave you with Dr. Lindbergh. Dr. Lindbergh, you have the floor. Good afternoon. And I wish you a most successful event and discussion of such an important topic at this time, which can be called anything but normal. These sessions would normally be held at our campus in Utah, and we would have 100 representatives and delegates coming from 50 countries. But this is not normal time. This is a different period, and this has faced us with a challenge of how to continue meeting in a manner that is worthwhile and which allows you to exchange opinions. So on behalf of the Center, I cordially welcome you to this session. of this 27th Symposium on Law and Religion. And I recommend all participants to join us, and thank you for your participation. And also let me commend you for such an important event. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor. Thanks for your welcoming remarks. We have heard Denise Posse de Limbert, who is Senior District Judge of the 3rd Judicial District Court of Utah and member of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies of the J. Reuben Clark Law School of Brigham Young University. As the doctor says, this is new to us as a situation, but far from normal. So to talk about this new normal, there's a group of experts this day who will talk about it. I will now give the floor to our speakers one by one and introduce them. But let me share with you some housekeeping rules so that you can enjoy the different presentations and the Q&A that will follow. First, we will listen to some introductory remarks by the panel members. They will make some brief comments to introduce the topic. Each of them will have some 8 minutes to introduce the topic, and then there will be a brief Q&A, questions that you can send via WhatsApp, writing to the number 849-214-0101. After dialing 1-849-214-0101. You can submit your questions via that phone number, and panel members will try to entertain them. So to begin and start with the expert panel, I will introduce our first panelist. This is Reverend Francisco Antonio Jimenez Rosario. Reverend Francisco Antonio Jimenez Rosario was born on 17 May 1960. He studied philosophy at the Santo Tomás de Aquino seminar in Bonn, Germany, when he completed his PhD in 1998. On 22 December 1990, he was ordained priest. He has been Deputy Director of the Minor Seminar, Coordinator of the University Pastoral of the Catholic University of Cibao, and General Secretary of the Dominican Episcopal Conference, also Chair of the Pontifical St. Thomas of Aquino Chair, and he has taught ecumenism, ecclesiology, interreligious dialogue, among others. At present, he is Director of the National Institute for the National Pastoral Institute in Dominican Republic. He is a parish of the Immaculate Conception de la Vega Church and professor at the Pontifical Catholic University. After this brief introduction, we leave you with Reverend Francisco Jimenez Rosario. You have the floor, Reverend. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to engage in this dialogue, an ecumenical dialogue that will help us all look for and find truth. I've been asked to talk about challenges and opportunities posed by religion and the prospects and viewpoint from the Catholic Church. I will mention a challenge, then an opportunity, and from that opportunity, the biblical theological grounds. Next, the first challenge that faces us in this situation is that of discernment. To ask ourselves what we are doing, how we are doing it, what our priorities are. That's why Pope Francis, in his new encyclic, says that believers are challenged to go back to their roots, to focus on what is essential. And what is essential? Worshipping God and love to our brothers and sisters, so that some aspects of our doctrine beyond context will not feed other forms of xenophobic denial, etc. One big opportunity is that of reconciliation with our primary job, which is to bear witness to faith. This means being Christ-centric rather than church-centric, and above all, to reach out to those who need to discover God's presence and signs in the history of mankind. The next second challenge is to a new theological way of thinking that will have a discourse that is more attentive to the signs of time and the conditions given by the context, to provide analysis that will help us understand difficult situations such as the one we are living now, and in guiding consciousness because of the uncertainty we are living in. We cannot understand the Bible unless we have the context into account. We cannot understand faith without this new reality lived by mankind. It is a matter of what theologists call an open-eyed theology in the face of the new circumstances. And shift from a hidden God to a revealed God. And just for discussion, I would like to mention two elements where we can see that a theology, that open-eyed theology, the reality of the homo cyber, the man that is technology-centric, and the religious indifference, which is precisely the lack of interest in God and religion. That is, what place God takes. How can I find that God hidden, revealed amidst that situation? That's the next image. The demand for transparency and consistency amongst all those who are faithful, especially the ones that are called upon guiding others and they were for a role model for faith. Meta discourse has disappeared, and whatever remains is what can integrate discourse into life. This is a period that despises a double standard and is looking for consistency in life. This is a big opportunity for us Christians and for religion. Religion must offer modern men new forms of religious experience based on, for example, on the respect for the different, by creating a network of relations, interpersonal relations, that will start from what I call the essential elements of faith and of life, of course. That is, the dignity of each human being. We've all been created after God's image, strengthening our sense of belonging, which starts with a comprehensive cosmovision, where we all feel interconnected and interrelated. My problem is not just mine, it must be your problem as well. That's also a word for the other religions. The fourth challenge is our commitment to building a more equitable world, a world where there is more humanity, solidarity. This is the biggest challenge. That is, the concern should not be religion itself or the belief itself, but how my faith helps build a better world. Here we can resort to the mystery of God's reincarnation that becomes one with us amidst a situation of social inequality and injustice. He proclaims the implementation of God's kingdom. That's why I believe that the different religions, starting with ascribing value to human beings as God's creatures and God's children, they can make a contribution to building what we have, the brotherhood, and to defending justice in society. This is a thought that Pope Francis, in his latest encyclical document, Fratelli Tutti, develops extensively. The big opportunity is offered to us in these trying times, which is to take on and share pain. The heroic act that we witness as a manifestation of God's grace. It is a more reflexive approach, not a discursive one, because that's the biggest challenge. And the fifth and last one has to do with thinking of faith as Jesus did, being a sign, a sacrament, the yeast and light amidst the dark. We are submerged in pessimism, so we are called upon being the carriers of hope. Let me finish my presentation by saying this. I would like to finish my presentation sharing this, which is a quote from Pope Francis' last encyclical letter. The different religions throughout the world acknowledge human beings as creatures of God, and therefore creatures that are engaged in a relationship of brethren. Therefore, all religions are called upon to pay service to brotherhood throughout the world. By opening up to God, our Father, we recognize our universal condition as brothers. And for Christians, Jesus Christ and the documents are the source of human dignity and brotherhood. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, Reverend Francis Jimenez, Director of the National Pastoral Institute of the Pontifical Catholic University. He has very clearly spoken about the importance and challenges of religion as a whole. It is no longer a matter of competition, but of cooperation. I liked what he said, that it's more related to human beings and less to religion. It's the role of Jesus for Christians, and not something that is so much church-centric. That is the most interesting comment, and moving forward for a practical church that will become more relevant. That will be a big challenge facing religion in the post-COVID era, how religions can be assertive, facing social issues in an orchestrated and united fashion for the benefit of mankind and not just of religion. Thank you very much, Father Jimenez. Next, we will move on to the next speaker, Francesca Hawkins. She's past president and current secretary of the Media Association Trinidad and Tobago, who will talk about how to make the most of opportunities to deliver the message, the vision of the media and the means of communication. Before that, I will read her credentials. Francesca Hawkins is a news host for CNZ3 and an expert in PR in Trinidad and Tobago. She's also a filmmaker, past president and current secretary of the Trinidad and Tobago Media Association. Her recent documentary called People versus Jones was awarded a prize at the Toronto Festival Caribbean Tales. Also, she has delivered gender and filmmaking classes at the University of West Indies. Also, she was communications officer at the Prime Minister's Office of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the Ministry of Energy during the office of Basil Pandey's office. After that introduction, we leave the floor to Francesca Hawkins.
Muchas gracias y bon après-midi à tous mes amis qui participaient particulièrement.
Muchas gracias al Dr. Coyo de Haití.
But only English, and I could not figure out how to get the translation, but I'm really pleased that I really understood as much as I did that was spoken in Spanish. So I am up to speed with the conversation. How we're going to communicate together, I don't know during the panel. When I was asked to join this panel by Mr. Salvidar, I explained to him that I am not an expert in religion nor in law. And he explained to me that the objective of my participation was to speak from a media point of view. So I am not an expert by any means in the areas that my distinguished colleagues can speak from. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have a very diverse society, similar to other regions in the Caribbean and in the Americas. Europe, China, the Middle East, and indigenous people as well. So that would tell you how many religions we have operating in a very small population of 1.4 approximately million people. So much so that we have an interreligious organization here that features representatives of Islam, Catholicism, the Protestant faith, Baha'i, and others. And this organization is very important because it is a place where religious differences have a very constitutionally ordained forum through which conflict can be resolved. And importantly, the overseeing of various schools which are participatory with government, but are run by religions that I have mentioned, primarily Islam, Hindu schools, and Christian schools, both Catholic and Anglican. When COVID struck, because the network of faith-based organizations is so evolved, you could say, in our island, that the government committed approximately $4.5 million to the faith-based organizations, divided up over 3 months, to provide immediate intervention and care to our population. And this was done in large measure because these organizations can be so much more efficient in reaching people than the government institutions. So these various faith-based organizations were given almost carte blanche to take these funds, which are sizable, and distribute through food packaging, housing, and other interventions to the immediate needy who not only lost their jobs almost overnight, but in particular the poorest who in Trinidad and Tobago often eat food bought by money that they may have earned that very day. In other words, in Trinidad, we say that is hand-to-mouth living, of which there are many on the fringes of society. So I wanted to place in context first how much work can be done and is being done by various religions by way of immediate intervention and partnership with government. Having said that, in the title of my piece, it is How to Seize Opportunities to Convey the Message. So right away, I have touched on the immediate seizing of opportunities in the first instance of the crisis. Having said that, money that has been injected through the organizations was only earmarked for 3 months. So the crisis, while it received immediate attention, is certainly going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger in the coming months and years, and particularly in a society like a Caribbean island where institutionality is not as strong as it might be in North America or parts of Europe or bigger societies. It means that the vulnerable are particularly and increasingly at risk, particularly women and children, not to mention the mental state of the male population unable to access provisions for their family, and the increase in domestic violence that we've seen, sexual violence towards children who are trapped in lockdown, etc., etc. I'm sure many of these issues are common in the islands and countries where you are from. So the question is really, in my view, this has happened, so what next? Because obviously the rise of marginalized people is going to be exponential within the next 2 years and onwards as economic recovery continues. So we have religious and faith-based organizations, but we have many, many vulnerable people who do not belong to any formalized religion. So what can and what should formalized religious organizations do to connect with so many people who are on the fringe? In a sense, it's easier for you to speak directly to your flock and provide that assistance. But it's entirely possible that even bigger numbers will be coming from groups, children and women, and of course, men and the elderly, who may or may not be connected in a cultural or historical way to one religion or the other. And what kind of services will be offered? Will handing out money just be enough? I don't think so. I think arising out of this situation, the levels of trauma and the need for reskilling and retooling with respect to earning income is going to become so exponential that I want to propose to you all that one of the things I believe is required is for religious groups to seriously upskill with a view to providing increasingly I don't want to say sophisticated, but I would say expert assistance with respect to matters such as psychological counseling, trauma counseling, and indeed helping people to live not only without an income, but the likelihood of an income as we have known it in the past of simply having evaporated. So it is my view, and I think that this is an opportunity that I believe that groups that have these incredible connections with community, such as faith-based organizations, must really look at strategically developing its own human resources to be able to address these unforeseen human expressions and disillusionment and lack of hope and desperation, because I believe what we are seeing is really the beginning of a new world, a new phase in human civilization. And I believe that the time is not to adjust when the crisis is really upon us, but to strategically look at how you're going to treat with these very vast problems sociologically, and obviously with the values of God and godliness. You have one common route through which to reach people. But I do believe that it's not going to be enough necessarily to speak from a place of belief, but from a place of faith in tomorrow. And to do that will include being able to provide for societies and individuals really skilled interventions, both psychologically and professionally, that maybe we have never had to confront before. So I'm just trying to set two phases of the problem. One, the seizing of the immediate opportunity, which I'm quite certain even in your countries, your members would have risen to the task immediately to intervene in the short-term crisis. But I believe going forward, when education is going to become more difficult, for example, all the online learning here in Trinidad, 40% of the students do not have access to either the internet or digital devices to follow classes. So right away, we're talking about really the poorest of the poor in an even less equitable situation than before COVID. And if you fast forward that 2, 3, 5 years' time, we can only imagine where those populations will be at, even compared with where they are now. So from my point of view, from my very secular point of view, I would like to propose that the incredible opportunity is for organizations such as yours, which are resourced or at least certainly organized, governed, have legacies connected to the institutions of state even, that special human resource planning be addressed among your membership to deal with issues that we are looking at in the next 2 to 5 to 10 years, which are all going to be unimagined and new. And we could presume that many people affected economically and education-wise through this system that we're going through, the pandemic system, will require a particular kind of very specialized intervention that maybe organizations such as yours are well positioned to address in terms of expanding your community relations and addressing in a very specialized way the new kinds of needs that people will have, which is not only economic, but a whole range and increasingly difficult psychological and familial situations. So I hope I have touched on what I think are some of the major opportunities. And against all of this, we're looking at the increasing strength of digital tribes rather than congregational groups, and all the spatial issues that you would very well be familiar with. But I believe over time, all of these kinds of isolations and digital identities will require increasingly specialized interventions by groups who are committed, like your groups are, to community building and heart to heart. How does that sound as an address? Can I leave you now? Is that something we can think about?
Muchísimas gracias, licenciada Francesca.
Thank you very much, Francesca Hawkins. It's been an excellent presentation. Very, very interesting. You have just heard Francesca Hawkins, who is past president and current secretary of the Trinidad and Tobago Media Association. In the case of Reverend Jimenez, who spoke before her, he focused on the challenges, the situations that we are facing and we will have to face, whereas Francesca Hawkins focused on the opportunities. And of course, she talked about the challenges. I'm struck by the fact that she describes the diversity present in the Caribbean, cultural diversity, which involves a religious diversity as well. This constitutes an opportunity for religious groups, especially, as she noted, because at our nation's institutionality is weak, and that institutional deficit that she mentioned, that's what organized religions, churches may tap and step on. It's very interesting, and the opportunities that come in future. I was struck by the fact that through social services to be demanded by post-COVID, in the post-COVID period, religious groups will be contacted or connected with social groups they weren't connected with before. This is a question I posed for the Q&A. how can churches and religious groups ethically deal with this process, how to strike a balance between preaching and religious activism and the true humanitarian social work that needs to be carried out. With that, we leave for later. We thank Francesca Hawkins once again for your comments. Let me remind you that you have a number where you can send your questions for the Q&A session, 849-214-0101. 849-214-0101. That's the number to which you can send your questions. We will conclude the panel by listening to the last expert, Dr. Guélin Collot. Dr. Collot will talk about will give the academic perspective of the subject matter of our session. Dr. Collot is a law professor at the Versailles University in France, and he has a master's degree in public finance and research from the Banu Sorbonne, France, and also in international business. He has a degree in law from the Haiti State University, magna cum laude. Dr. Collot has also worked at Laval University in Quebec, Canada, and also dealt with alternative dispute resolution methods at the Gainesville University in the United States. He's been member of the International Law Committee of the OIS, the State of Haiti, and Dean of the Law School at that university. At present, he's chair of the Mount Everest University in Haiti, research professor and member of the PhD thesis committee. He has authored several documents, the latest called Law and Religion, Influence, Interdependence, or Interference. What is the role of religious freedom? Dr. Collot, you have the floor, talking about the academic perspective on the role of religion in the post-COVID era. Dr. Collot, you have the floor.
Merci. Thank you. Gracias. Je vous remercie très sincèrement.
Thank you for inviting me to participate at this 27th International Symposium on Law and Religion. I would like to thank Dr. Hawkins for
from Haiti. Rôle de la religion dans l'ère.
Topic is the role of religion in the post-COVID era. We are going to talk about these challenges, and by way of introduction, I have to go back to share with you two ideas that to me are important. The idea of religion, which we are all familiar with. Oftentimes we have a definition for that, but this does not respond merely to a definition. There are at least two of them. The first one is the strict definition of what we have just mentioned, that is, religion as a relationship between mankind and divinity, and the relationship between this and human beings. But also, and generally speaking, there's a definition which has to do with a religion which may not be connected to God. When we speak of the religion without God, this appeared during the French Revolution, where there was a religion without God, and in that period we spoke about the religion of the supreme God. Generally speaking, there is a form of religion associated to the animist movement that we see in Haiti with voodoo. We don't know whether it would be a religion, folklore, or what it is, but in any case, we speak of religion in the strict sense of the term, that is, the relationship between man and God, divinity and humanity. Another post-COVID concept, if we stick to the word, is the hypothetical value. We are talking about an undetermined period of time. This hypothesis has fed discussions in the scientific arena. The subject matter for today, we will not approach from the different developmental aspects, which would consist in verifying and submitting proposals. I will speak about the proposals only, just to stick to the time given to me, even though I will not be able to go into details. Let me say that religion may play three roles to play with respect to two of its main missions. First, it has a reactive role, as well as a proactive role, and an interactive role as well. Regarding the reactive role, religion makes a contribution to the damages caused by COVID, or indirectly through preventative measures. So when we speak of damages, we are speaking of socioeconomic damages, confinement, lockdown, unemployment, and the like. Also, there's the human damages. So, defined in stringent terms, religion is one of the sectors that's been most affected by COVID, that has left behind victims and brought activity to a halt. Attendance to churches in particular, this has been impossible. Religious ceremonies have been interrupted. The doors of churches and other buildings have been closed down. And also, a religious public order has been created that relates to three elements of mankind. There's been a weakening, and this may affect religious freedom. So we will need to go back to normal in the post-COVID era. Religion must retake its past freedoms of reunion and action to reivindicate and exercise its rights. There's also a proactive role. Religion may convey information on the disease, on COVID, and it should also be a part of a solidarity movement, and also contribute to re-socialization. So, religion is a primary group in sociological terms that allows us to see evolution. We have to think of the COVID and post-COVID time. Religion can also be used for raising awareness. That in the current context in Haiti, People have been paying attention to this. We've seen a reduction in the number of cases and in the number of victims. And there's also the interactive role. Religion is cross-cutting in that it relates to all sectors, public and private life, families. Religion is everywhere, and it must therefore interact with other structures and other sectors, sharing this cross-cutting mission regarding formal, informal, and non-formal education. Formal education we know already. Formal and informal education are yet to be defined. These have to contribute to reflection and action in the field of scientific research, respecting its own limits. It's not that we want religion to do the scientific work or of scientists engaging in religion. That's the conclusion that was reached back in 2012 when talking about the theological reinstatement in a scientific session. So mankind should coexist with COVID for a long time, apparently. We don't see a post-COVID period for tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Religion, in the strict sense of the word, may be considered a determining factor to contribute at this time when the pandemic is evolving. COVID announces a new way of life, a new cautious approach aiming at a healthy life or a healthy way of life where all religions can coexist. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Collot, for your presentation. We have heard Dr. Collot, Chair of Mount Everest University from Haiti. With this, we have completed the panel, and we now move on to a brief Q&A. Those of you who want to ask a question, we have some already. You can send them to the number 849-214-0101. Dr. Collot has briefly but very richly talked about the reactive, proactive, and interactive role of religion and how society can step in. I was struck by the fact that religion must not only participate in these processes, but also understand its limitations. So that today one of the biggest questions is whether religion should participate, speak on certain topics that are the realm of the state or of other public agencies. This is an interesting debate to engage in. And once again, I would like to thank Dr. Collot for his comments. Now, we're going to enter in questions. And following the order of speakers, I would like to first ask Reverend Francis Jimenez. You spoke about the practical faith, about the importance of religion focusing on people. That is moving from a man-centric approach developed by the Greek from cosmology to anthropology in ancient times, so as to be man-centric. You underscored that need. You said that thus religion will have relevance in today's world, in the post-COVID era. So how can you, Father Jimenez, how can religious groups on the one hand, and society at large on the other, the state, civil society, the various factual powers of society allow that process. That is, how can you, through a practical, how can religious groups become more relevant to society rather than be considered as being limited to the realm of faith and spirituality, but rather have an impact at a social level? Father Francisco Jimenez, you have the floor. Well, we always start from a theological standpoint, which is the compass for us, the theology of incarnation. There we see a revelation, how religion can help overcome the situation faced by mankind. Go back to the scatum, to the realization of human beings. Of course, religion has something positive about it, in that it has to extrapolate and go beyond its limitations, in this case COVID, and go beyond, look beyond. Religion, therefore, must serve society as a stimulus, but stimulus that doesn't stem from discourse, but from a life experience that will drive mankind and society itself. So consistency is of the essence, as you said. That is, people who are religious must be consistent with their principles so that society may serve its role. Thank you for your comment. And now, Francesca Hawkins, I have a question for you. And before that, I would like to make sure that she is following the interpretation into English so that we may ask the question and interact with her. Dr. Hawkins, can you hear me? Can you hear my English version or the English version of what I'm saying? In the meantime, I will move on to the question for Professor Guillain-Collot. Or I can ask Dr. Hawkins, I will ask a question for her in English. In the meantime, I will ask a question to Dr. Guillain-Collot. Dr. Collot talked about the role of religion, it being reactive, proactive, that is, reacting to the crisis. COVID is just one of many that may come in future. I do not want to be apocalyptic, but many experts have said this is just the beginning of many challenges that may face us. So it is being proactive and raising awareness about the role of religion, religions that may reach out to people, and the perspective of cooperating in the different or with the different forces acting in society. So the question for Dr. Collot is, given that the sector you belong to is one of these living forces, that is, the academia is one of these living forces, how can the religious discourse in the post-COVID era be taken to the academia? How can we study the religious phenomenon to raise awareness amongst future professionals, students, the youth that is being taught at these universities who are going to be the future? I mean, how can we bring this to them from the academic and scientific standpoint so that they can understand their role in future? What would you like to say, Dr. Collot? There's a relationship between religion and higher education. We are talking about the biblical religions, Judaism and Christianism. There are very tight ties, year-long ties between education and the Christian religion, for example. In Islam, there is a movement like that brings together education and religion, but it's not as strong as you can see in the case of Christian religions. There is actual basis that is established at the higher education level. We've started with teaching, with education, but first and foremost, this has to do with higher education. At universities, whether it is in Latin America, in Europe, in different universities, or Madre Maestra, the different universities that are taking part of this event, they are sustained by religion. Thus, we have the advantage of encouraging applied research, but without leaving faith aside. You know that oftentimes scientific researchers tend to walk away from faith. This is not new. This has happened since the 17th century, even with Copernicus. So the issue of faith and science has existed for a long time. And there's this relationship between higher education and religion. We can talk about science and conscience, research, science, and faith. Thank you, Dr. Collot, for your comments. Just like history has proven, there's a way of linking faith or spirituality to reason-based knowledge, as St. Thomas did at the time and many others throughout history. This is perhaps a new opportunity to put forward a new proposal, faith from a more reasoned standpoint, and also the possibility to give way to faith. With this, we conclude the panel. This panel formed by Reverend Francisco Jimenez, Francesca Hawkins, and Dr. Guilan Collot. I would like to close the session by listening to the final comments from the representatives of the main sponsors, thanks to whom we've had this session as a part of the 27th Annual International Symposium on Law and Religion, focusing on the Caribbean challenges and opportunities of religion in the post-COVID era. I would like to give the floor, therefore, to the ones representing us today, these institutions. First, Dr. David Alvarez Martin, who is academic vice chair of the Pontifical Catholic University, and next, Dr. Gary Doxey, Associate Director of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies of the BYU in the United States. These are the two heroes, thanks to whose institutions we have managed to engage in such a wonderful discussion. Dr. Alvarez, you have the floor, and then Dr. Doxey. Good afternoon to you all. When this year started, few could imagine that we would spend most of the time locked down without engaging in any productive activity and fearing that we would catch a virus that affects men and women alike, peoples of all ages, without differentiating any income level or ideologies, convictions, religions, etc. This is affecting us globally. COVID does not respect the way we separate and classify each other. It treats us all equally. It affects us all equally. Something that we are discovering only at the beginning of the 21st century. I mean, we are living in a common home, that we are all brothers. Two topics that are present in Pope Francis's two encyclical documents. Men from the different religions have to cooperate with each other and with those who do not have a faith at the service and to the service of all human beings. We need to learn the lesson taught by COVID. Otherwise, we will be put to more radical tests if we fail to care for others. Tough lesson, but a wonderful, enlightening opportunity to come together again. For the Pontifical Catholic University, it is part of its vocation and mission to participate in efforts like these, to engage in dialogue amongst various religions, always at the service of mankind. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Alvarez. We now thank you for your participation, and we immediately give the floor to Dr. Gary B. Doxey. Thank you very much. It's a blessing to me, a privilege and an honor to be among you and listen to the contributions made by the different panel members and the wonderful summary just shared by Rafael Gutierrez, the moderator, as well as the words by Dr. David Alvarez Martin, a dear friend of ours. The relationship we have at the university is very important. The relationship, we have with the Pontifical Catholic University, Madre Maestra, and in this cooperation, we have had, as you know, several opportunities to hold symposiums on religious freedom and the importance of religion in social life. It is my turn to thank and commend you, and I do it wholeheartedly. I would like to thank each and all of you, and I would like to profoundly commend each and all of you. Let me close by sharing just a few comments from what I have heard today and our observations at during this period. I believe we've all come to know better how important people are, how important individuals, human beings are, individually and collectively, the importance of our community, of our social being. This is something we sometimes miss. And we sometimes feel lonely in this COVID world. But at this meeting, we are talking about the post-COVID era. And it's a light of hope that we have to show forward, the importance of the lessons we are learning today. I hope we can carry these lessons forward once this test is over. This will come to an end at some point. And when this is over, I hope we will not forget some of the lessons we are being taught today, the importance of human beings, the value we have individually and collectively, the value of self-sufficiency. We have been challenged by Francesca Hawkins to commit our efforts to helping people to heal better, be more self-sufficient. This is something that we need to take on as a goal, as a challenge, looking ahead, that is to help our brothers and sisters. Interreligious cooperation is essential. We have to celebrate diversity. I've worked for many years in the field of international religious freedom, and over these years, I've noticed how important the interreligious dialogue is and the work they carry out. From that cooperation, there's grows not only relationships of freedom that may be of great use for facing the challenges facing us these days, but also a greater appreciation, or we might use a word that comes from the gospel, improved sympathy towards our brothers, the fraternity that Pope Francis speaks about in his encyclical document. This is something that is inspiring for us all, the importance of dignity, fraternity. Dignity is at the root of all human rights. It's at the root and of ascribing value to all of us and each of us individually, not only as human beings, but also as brothers and sisters, and is at the root of understanding and safeguarding the important right of religious freedom. Religious freedom starts with respect, and it also leads us to respecting ourselves best. Thank you very much for your attention. And I would like to thank you, each and all of you again, all members of the panel, the organizers, and the people who have cooperated, people from the other institutions. Thank you very much to you all. Thanks, Professor. Thanks to Dr. David Alvarez, Vice Chair of the Pontifical University, and Dr. Gary Doxey, Associate Director of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies of the J. Reuben Clark Law School, BYU. So, in concluding this session, we see that the value of solidarity and fraternity charity as a big virtue, underscored by St. Thomas, that virtue that brings us closer to God within us, because the answer lies in the heart of each human being. We see that in these times, religion will still remain relevant and material, and rather than being left aside, public discussion is a value that is further reaffirmed today, because religion is not something that is just inherent to religious peoples, but to all. Thanks to you all. It's been a pleasure for me, Rafael Gutierrez, Director for Communication of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to have moderated this session, which we conclude now, as well as the symposium. And we wish you all a nice day. Thank you.